It all started with a single click. One Disney employee, working from home, downloaded what they thought was a harmless game modification. They had no idea they were opening a digital backdoor. A door that would lead a shadowy hacker group straight into the heart of the Magic Kingdom, triggering one of the most catastrophic corporate breaches of the 21st century. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was a heist. And the target wasn't gold or jewels. It was Disney's most protected asset, its secrets. For decades, the Walt Disney Company has been a fortress, a cultural and corporate behemoth, fiercely protective of its brand, its characters, and its future plans. But in July of 2024, that fortress was breached, not by a frontal assault, but by a quiet, insidious infiltration that went unnoticed for days. The group responsible called themselves Nullbulge, and they didn't just knock on the door, they took the whole house. We're talking about over a terabyte of sensitive data. Now, a terabyte is a number that's hard to visualize. So let's put it this way. 1 terabyte is enough to hold 250,000 photos or 500 hours of HD video. Nullbulge claimed they got between 1.1 and 1.2 terabytes. This wasn't just a leak, it was a digital flood. Inside that flood were the crown jewels of Disney's internal world. 44 million private Slack messages, 13,000 PDF documents, almost 19,000 spreadsheets. This was the unvarnished, unfiltered, and deeply confidential inner workings of one of the most powerful entertainment companies on earth, suddenly in the hands of anonymous hackers. So how did it happen? How does a giant like Disney, with a market cap in the hundreds of billions and presumably a top-tier cybersecurity budget, fall victim to something that started on one person's personal laptop? The answer is both terrifyingly simple and incredibly complex. The initial point of entry was that employee. They had access, legitimate access, to around 10,000 of Disney's internal Slack channels. That's an astonishing number, giving them a bird's eye view of conversations happening across countless departments, from theme park operations to corporate strategy to creative development. The hackers didn't need to break down the main gates of Disney's network. They just needed the keys to one very important employee's account. They got those keys using malware. The exact delivery method is still debated. Some reports suggest it was hidden inside a mod for a popular video game. Others point to a compromised AI browser extension, one of those handy tools that promises to make your life easier, but was secretly logging keystrokes in the background. It's a chilling reminder that the biggest threats often disguise themselves as helpful conveniences. Once the malware was on the employee's laptop, it was game over. The hackers had the credentials. They were in. And once they were in, they found a gold mine. The primary target was Slack, the communication platform Disney used for everything. Think of it as the company's central nervous system. Every project update, every casual complaint, every brainstorm, every confidential directive, it all lived on Slack. Nullbulge began to systematically scrape everything they could get their hands on. 44 million messages. That's not just chatter. That's a complete, searchable archive of the company's brain. Imagine every private conversation you've ever had at work, every joke, every criticism of your boss, every half-baked idea, suddenly copied and stored on a hacker's server. It's a corporate nightmare scenario. But data is just numbers until you understand what's in it. What was in those 13,000 PDFs and 18,800 spreadsheets? This is where the story goes from a corporate headache to a Hollywood thriller. The files contained everything: unreleased project details, scripts for movies and shows that weren't even announced, blueprints and operational plans for new theme park attractions, financial projections, marketing strategies, employee PII, personally identifiable information, and perhaps most damaging of all, thousands upon thousands of login credentials to other internal systems. The hackers didn't just steal the map, they stole the keys to every room in the castle. This breach had the potential to derail projects years in the making and expose strategies worth billions. But here's where the story takes a sharp, dramatic turn. As Null Bulge was boasting about their massive haul, they dropped a bombshell. They claimed they didn't do it entirely alone. According to them, they had an insider. In their public statements, the hackers alleged that a Disney employee had initially agreed to help them, providing crucial information and access. This collaborator supposedly got them past certain initial security hurdles. But then, for reasons we may never know, the insider got cold feet. They backed out, severing contact and cutting off the hackers' deeper access. Now Bodge claimed that this betrayal is what stopped them from penetrating even further into Disney's network, preventing them from, say, deploying ransomware across the entire company. To punish this person and to prove their point, Nullbulge did something incredibly cool. They publicly doxed the employee they claimed was their accomplice, releasing their name and personal details online. Whether this story of an insider is true or just a fabrication to sow more chaos, we don't know for sure. But the accusation alone added a layer of human betrayal and drama to an already devastating technical failure. It created an atmosphere of paranoia within Disney. Who could you trust? Was the person in the next cubicle or in your next Zoom meeting the one who helped open the floodgates? This entire situation has echoes of another infamous entertainment industry hack, the 2014 Sony Pictures breach. In that case, hackers linked to North Korea crippled the company, releasing embarrassing executive emails, employee data, and entire unreleased films. The world watched as a global corporation was publicly humiliated. The Disney breach, a decade later, showed that the threat hadn't gone away. It had just evolved. The targets are the same: entertainment giants with priceless intellectual property. But the methods are getting stealthier, and the potential for damage is growing exponentially. With 1.2 terabytes of their most sensitive data in the wind, Disney was in full-blown crisis mode. The first order of business was to stop the bleeding. The second was to figure out what to do next. Their most public and most controversial decision was to announce they were ditching Slack, the very platform that had been the conduit for the breach was being ripped out and replaced company-wide with Microsoft Teams. On the surface, this seemed like a decisive, logical security move. If a tool is compromised, you get rid of it and replace it with something you believe is more secure. Disney's official line was that this was part of a broader strategy to enhance their security posture, centralize their communications, and reduce vulnerabilities. They pointed to the integrative security features within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem as a major reason for the switch. But almost immediately, cybersecurity analysts and industry insiders started asking questions. Was Slack really the problem, or was it just a crime scene? The platform itself wasn't hacked. The hackers got in because of a compromised user account. They had legitimate credentials. With those credentials, they could have accessed any system the employee had permission to use, whether it was Slack, email, or a file server. Some experts argue that blaming Slack was a classic case of blame shifting. It was easier for Disney to point a finger at a third-party vendor than to admit to a catastrophic failure of their own internal security practices. Things like inadequate enforcement of multi-factor authentication, poor training on phishing and malware, and a culture where an employee could have access to a staggering 10,000 channels. Was it really necessary for any single person to have that much access? There was also a financial angle. Migrating a company the size of Disney from one enterprise platform to another is a monumental undertaking. But it can also be a cost-cutting measure. By consolidating their software licenses under a single Microsoft Enterprise agreement, some analysts suggested Disney might have been killing two birds with one stone, appearing to take drastic security action while also streamlining their software budget. The debate still rages. Was it a shrewd security upgrade, a cynical cost-cutting move, or a desperate attempt to find a scapegoat? The truth is likely a messy combination of all three. But while executives debated platforms and analysts debated motives, the true cost of this hack was landing on individuals. Corporate data breaches feel abstract. Numbers on a screen, terabytes and millions of messages. It's hard to grasp the real-world impact. But in early 2025, a story emerged that made it all painfully real. It was the story of a former Disney employee whose life was turned upside down by the hack, even though they had nothing to do with it. This employee, whose name was kept private for their own safety, had downloaded a piece of AI-powered software. It was one of those new, exciting tools that promised to revolutionize their workflow. They downloaded it onto their personal computer, which they occasionally used for work. Unbeknownst to them, the software was laced with sophisticated spyware, the very same strain that was later linked to the now-botched breach. The spyware silently scraped their credentials, their files, their entire digital life. When the breach became public and Disney's internal investigation began, their digital footprint was flagged. They were caught in the dragnet. They faced intense scrutiny, suspicion, and ultimately, the loss of their job. They became a casualty of a war they didn't even know they were fighting. Their story is a brutal illustration of the human cost of cybercrime. It's not just about corporate reputations or stock prices. It's about lives, careers, and mental health. It's the person who makes one innocent click and ends up paying the price for a multi-billion-dollar company's security lapse. This is the modern reality of work. The line between our personal and professional devices has blurred to the point of being non-existent. We answer work emails on our phones. We use personal laptops for Zoom calls. We download new apps and tools to be more productive. And every single one of those actions is a potential door for someone like Naubauch to walk through. While these personal tragedies were unfolding, the justice system was slowly grinding into motion. Hacking on this scale doesn't just go unanswered. The FBI and the Department of Justice launched a major investigation, and it began to bear fruit. Eventually, authorities tracked down one of the individuals involved. A man from Santa Clarita, California, was arrested and charged. Faced with overwhelming digital evidence, he pleaded guilty to hacking into the computers of Disney employees and being involved in the release of the stolen Slack files. The arrest was a significant victory for law enforcement. It sent a clear message that cybercrime is not a victimless or anonymous act. There are real-world consequences, but it was only a partial victory. Hacker groups like Naubauch are often decentralized international collectives. Catching one member doesn't necessarily mean you've dismantled the entire organization. The masterminds, the architects of the initial breach, may still be out there, planning their next target. The legal battle was just one front in a much larger war. The other front was being fought inside Disney's own server rooms and boardrooms. The 2024 hack was a wake-up call of the highest order. It forced the company to fundamentally rethink its entire approach to security. The old model, the castle and moat model, was clearly broken. That's the idea that you build a strong perimeter, a firewall, to keep bad guys out, and you trust everyone who is already inside. Naubauch proved that once an attacker is inside the walls, the whole kingdom is vulnerable. So Disney began a massive, expensive, and difficult pivot to a new philosophy: zero trust. The name sounds like something out of a spy movie, but it's a very real and increasingly critical cybersecurity concept. Zero trust operates on a simple, paranoid principle: never trust, always verify. It assumes that the network is already compromised. It assumes that any user, any device, any application could be a threat until it proves otherwise. In a zero trust environment, it doesn't matter if you're inside the corporate network or outside. Every single request for access to data is treated with suspicion. Before you can open a file, you have to authenticate your identity, maybe with a password and a code from your phone. The system checks to make sure your device is secure and up to date. It verifies that you actually have a legitimate need to access that specific piece of information, and only that piece. It's a principle of least privilege. You get access to the bare minimum you need to do your job, and nothing more. No more accounts with access to 10,000 Slack channels. Implementing zero trust in a company the size of Disney is like rebuilding a battleship while it's still at sea. It's a monumental task. It requires re-architecting networks, deploying new software, and most difficult of all, changing the culture. It means more friction for employees, more logins, more verification steps. It's a constant trade-off between security and convenience. But for Disney, the convenience of the old way had led to an unacceptable level of risk. The hack forced their hand, pushing them to adopt a cutting-edge security posture that many other corporations are now scrambling to emulate. They learned their lesson in the most public and painful way imaginable. So what does this story, this epic tale of a single click, a massive data heist, insider drama, and a corporate giant brought to its knees tell us? It tells us that in the digital age, no fortress is impenetrable. It tells us that the biggest vulnerability in any system isn't the software or the hardware. It's the people. A well-meaning employee trying to be more productive, or a disgruntled insider looking for revenge. The Disney hack of 2024 wasn't just a story about technology. It was a story about secrets, trust, and the immense power that hidden information holds. It exposed the fragile digital infrastructure that underpins even our most beloved institutions. The magic of Disney is built on carefully crafted illusion and storytelling. For a few terrifying weeks, Nullbulge ripped back the curtain and showed the world the messy, complicated, and intensely human reality behind it all. The company will recover. New movies will be released, new rides will be built, and the brand will endure. But the scars of this breach will remain. It serves as a permanent, glaring warning to every other major corporation. The threat is real, it is persistent, and the next click could be the one that opens the door to your own worst nightmare. It forces us all to ask a difficult question. In a world where our personal and professional lives are completely intertwined online, how secure are we, really? If you found this deep dive into one of the biggest hacks in recent history fascinating, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We break down complex stories like this every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. And let me know in the comments, do you think Disney's move to Microsoft Teams was the right call, or were they just trying to save face? Let's discuss. Thanks for watching. Please leave your opinions in the comments.